our research trips to various stations in the Met, we found that a lot of them would have these colourful desktop publishing signs that people had made up for, you know, the canteen or the toilets, but you'd also find them for victim support, which always seemed a bit strange to see this kind of great big bendy, colourful font for things like victim support. Most of these things here are little trims that we made. Basically, when you're editing the film, it's like doing another draft of the script, and you find that there are jokes which, when you wrote them, you know, when you write them on the office, you think, oh, that's a good gag. And then when you actually come to film it and show it to an audience, you know, people get gag fatigue, and sometimes you just have too many verbal jokes in a row. So it's interesting which ones kind of don't make the cut, and there are ones like, cross the T's and dot the I's, which we thought were really, really funny, and just for whatever reason they don't really work in the context of the whole scene, so they come out. So and some of the gags here that were nice, like kind of Kukin's freeze frame gag, which we couldn't quite make work. This is a training, but also you get the occasional officer who's in a transitional period who's also staying with the cadets. So we like this idea of it being a bit like a college dorm with, you know, Simon's character way too old to be there, and this is like a little goodbye Mr. Chips moment. And it was a nice little gag, didn't quite make the grade, but that was Billy Seymour there, who was in Shaun of the Dead in 4E Electric. Sorry, Billy, for cutting you out. I apologise. Here are some extra gags from the station tour and little bits that we cut out. This one was cut out, I think I showed it to a friend of mine, Mark Morris, and when Simon said the line about, "Have you done something with your hair?" he immediately said, "Oh, is he his twin brother?" So I kind of thought maybe that kind of line was over-egging it and kind of giving the game away, so I ended up tightening it out. It didn't work in the way that I hoped it was. The whole thing, we had it set up earlier, the office out on the street, and then when we came to film it, basically, it doesn't really look like a street, it looks like a yard, so it was kind of a bit ruined. And this scene was a little bit of, like a little maudlin moment to make you feel sorry for Simon, but also, if you listen, Jim gives away the entire plot. He says the entire plot about the Village of the Year off-screen, which he thought was a nice little idea. Olivia about being Googled, which, we thought was funny, but when you look at it in the edit, you just think it's one of those gags in, 10 years' time, probably even less, is going to look very dated, so we got rid of it. Cookerful of urban slang. And also there's a bit more of the plot strand in here about Simon being, having reservations about being an armed policeman and killing somebody, and the idea that guns aren't cool, that he's not happy, really. This whole section here is showing Angel at his lowest ebb, really. He's so kind of unhappy to be in Sanford, and he gets this idea that by demoting himself to constable, which was originally in the script, we had it at one point that he demoted himself to constable, and then we changed it so he kind of just wanted to, take a more grassroots approach. And it's really trying to set up the idea that he goes back to the bottom of the ladder and he's the guy outside the cordon. It was, some nice stuff in here, but it didn't really, it felt really surplus to requirements once we started editing it together. Some nice reaction shots in here, particularly Saxon there, blinking. And another bin gag. Usually you have kind of like a rule of three of, 2 setups and 1 payoff, or 3 setups with the bin gag, but in this case we just had 2, so. Although it did look quite nasty, quite painful. And then this thing here, this idea with this joke at the end of, I think I have just the man, it's like one of those part breaks in a TV show, or it's a transition where, like Jim says, I think I have just the man, and you cut to Danny. But the idea with this is that, you have the line, and then he also says, Daddy! Just to really underline the obvious. I like that shot, but it's gone. This is based on a real anecdote. An officer that had moved from Tower Hamlets to Wiltshire spent the first few days on the job thinking that his radio was broken because there was nothing coming through, and kept ringing through to the office to say, is everything all right? I remember when I was filming this particular scene, I knew I was going to cut it as we were doing it. Bullying. I showed this to Guillermo del Toro when I was editing it, and he liked it, but he said, yes, maybe he'll lose the apple scene. So I did, which is why he's on the thanks list. Hissed this fall. And then we stuck another 2 crash mats, or another 1 crash mat here, and he just kept on going, which was really funny, but obviously just a bit too long for the film. But I love this bit here where he runs up to the 4th fence and then thinks, oh, fuck it. and runs off the other way. Can hear the crew laughing as well.
Right.
This was a running gag that we had in the script that occurred 3 times that we really, really liked, but eventually had to go. The idea of, but he runs the local supermarket, that Skinner was completely beyond reproach and above suspicion because he was the manager of the supermarket. And it's kind of like a nod to those, you know, it's like they're talking about the mayor. So like in Dirty Harry films when, you know, say, "God damn it, Harry, that's the mayor you're talking about," or "That's the mayor you're talking to." So the idea that the manager of the local supermarket could not be questioned in any way. Are you crazy? So I always thought that was a funny gag. Just at the end here as well, there's a little nod to the grassroots setup from earlier. And also kind of we sort of whittled down the hoodie subplot in the film. What I do like, though, is that he says hoods in the woods, and Danny assumes he's talking about the hoodies, but what he's really talking about is the NWA and their cloaks. So I like the idea that Webley knows about the NWA or has seen them, you know, in the witching hour, kind of running around the woods with their torches and their cloaks. This is some more stuff from the Andes in the pub. It's basically just covering up a few kind of loose ends plot-wise and referring back to like another cut bit about David Threlfall's wife Edna having dogs and some just gag fatigue, too many gags in a row. And there's a later similar joke with the done it with a plant, which is funnier. This is part of a whole hoodie subplot which got cut right down. It was a shame, actually. When in the very first draft of the script we had on the first night that Angel was in town, he fought the hoodies and had a big scrap. And we put it then later on as a way of kind of keeping the hoodies as a potential threat or potential suspect. And I like the image of them as spectral urchins and them all being kind of like silent, and it's nicely lit, this, but I wasn't very happy with the way that I shot the fight. It was a bit scrappy and the stunt didn't really work as well as I'd hoped of him going in the bin. Also, too many pratfalls with Ron Cook. Ron Cook is the king of pratfalls, but I think we over-egged it to the tune of 1, so this bit had to go. Obviously, you see kind of Gabriel there who, you know, becomes kind of a bit more apparent in a later cutscene. We were really pained to cut this scene out because when we wrote it, not only did we think it was really funny, but it was also the kind of central hook of the film is that when Angel says it's a bit far-fetched and Danny responds, "Well, it's a film, innit?" That was our way of excusing basically the latter half of the film. So we really like that conceit, but I don't think we ever really nailed it on the day. This was one of the first days of shooting. It was a shame to have to lose this. Responsible, and you know, it's a diversion from the main kind of like case. Also, we like the idea that the prime suspect of the hoodies is actually Weaver's grandson, but he doesn't realise this. So that was a nice setup for later, that, you know, that Gabriel gets his, you know, sort of revenge on his granddad. And then this scene kind of coming up here, like with Jim taking kind of Simon into the corridor, is like one of those classic kind of cop scenes of the chief giving our hero a dressing down. And again, it sort of wraps up the "he runs the local supermarket" running joke. I really like this shot as well, and I like the performances. I said to Jess Hall, the DP, I wanted to make this like a Gordon Willis style shot, really moody, a bit like something from like All the President's Men or the Parallax View, but it just had to go. And because we had a similar scene later with Jim taking Simon into his office after the Flores murder, it had to go. On the wall here is the real Nick Angel playing the late Sergeant Popwell, although we don't know he's late at this precise point in the story. Here's some cutscenes from the Fate section. This first one, we had the idea that Angel is royally pissed off, and so when Shooter offers him some lemonade, he downs it like hard liquor. I like the way that he shrugs like a stroppy teenager there as well. So, and this was also a setup for the raffle, which we ended up doing instead with a sort of PA announcement, so this kind of went. And in the school photo is actually the leader of the hoodies. So we had this idea that basically Angel lets kind of Gabriel off, that he has a chance to kind of he has a chance to drop him in it, but he doesn't. And so it's a way of showing that at this point in the film, Angel is starting to be less by the book and a bit more of a sort of a rounded and, individual. And also that then sets up that, he gains Gabriel's trust for later, so that when he rides back into town and sees the hoodies, they immediately join him in the kind of the rampage of vengeance against the NWA. Also, here was like the first monkey joke which we took out, which was Eric Fellner's idea. He suggested correctly that if we took this monkey joke out, it would make the second one funnier, and he was absolutely right. There's a little bit we lost here, which was just, one gag too many along these lines, but Paddy and Rafe coming in like the naughty schoolboys, the sort of the bullies again. In all of these films, you get the rival team come in and make some kind of wisecrack and stuff, and we thought it'd be funny that the height of their wit is to say "morning benders," so it amused us at the time, but it was just getting too long, so we nipped it out. And then this bit here is at the end of what we call the Clues Brothers montage of them kind of like cracking the case, and they like the idea that they get all energetic and they're running through the case, and then the momentum dissipates immediately, and both Danny and Angel get lost. And also there was a part of a subplot about the accidents, and we made reference to other accidents that had been happening in the town, which was just too many names. It became too confusing, so we only left in the one about Ben Fletcher and the pitchfork. This is a little line from Jim that I liked, but we cut out just to kind of pace it up. Also, it's worth pointing out that I think next year I'm hoping that we get the BAFTA for most use of the echoey door sound. Possibly the most use of an echoey door sound in cinema. This part of the kind of the Angel's case was basically referring back to the whole parking validation thing, the Snickers. So we like the idea that something like that was, an integral part of the case. And this plotline here is the idea that Skinner actually planned to open his own supermarket. So in a sense, he was going to profit from the new bypass himself. It ended up being surplus to requirements. The whole kind of, revelation here is becoming a little bit too dense, even though I really like Simon's rendition of One Stop Shop. This is a little cut scene we call The Paedophiles and Perverts, which I almost left in at the 11th hour because David had already done the music for it, David Arnold, and it was so beautiful.